Welcome back to Sistory History and to the second episode in our Londinium miniseries. Over 3 episodes, we're taking you on a journey across the capital, and we'll discuss our favourite exhibits from our usual sensorial viewpoint. This time, we're heading to the eastern edge of the city walls as we explore the Crypt Museum at the Church of All Hallows by the Tower. Long before the red buses and the Tower of London, there was Londinium, a bustling Roman city planted right on the banks of the River Thames. But what was it really like? Who lived there? And what can archaeological remains tell us about the everyday experiences of its residents? Caroline, why don't you tell us a bit about this site and how to visit?
Let's go on a little walk together, shall we? You get off the tube at Tower Hill. Now, if you turn right and head down towards the river and the Tower of London, you will pass quite a large section of Roman wall that is still in situ and still standing. And if you remember, Laura, there are a few information boards and that statue of Trajan.
Yeah, maybe they liked him the best.
Then you continue towards the Tower of London via the underpass. So you go under the road, and before heading actually to the entrance of the Tower of London and joining the queue, the Church of All Hallows is on your right. You can't miss it. It's the only church there. Again, like the Mithraeum, it's free to enter. Go in and there's a little underground crypt where you will find a small museum, which is actually in part of the original Saxon church, but it has some Roman tiled floor and a number of other artefacts.
Despite the small size.
Yeah. Now, quite honestly, there isn't an extensive selection of Roman finds, so we are going to use this episode to give a little bit more detail and flavour about Londinium in general.
Yes.
But I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that if you have half an hour to kill and you're really hot and you've run out of ice cream money and you just want to cool down after going around the Tower of London, this is a really quaint little place to visit and cool down.
Okay then, before we get into the exhibits, let's rewind to around 43 CE. So that's when the Roman Emperor Claudius sent his legions into Britain. Within 30 years, Londinium had already become a proper Roman city. It had a forum, a basilica, and an amphitheatre, as well as lots of bathhouses and temples. At its peak, Londinium had a population of around 60,000. That's people from all over the empire. And it covered about 1.3 kilometres square, roughly following the modern square mile. And actually, some of the ancient roads align with the current streets in the City of London as we know it today. The Roman city was enclosed by a massive stone wall, reinforced with towers and gates. And that was built in around 200 CE. It was about 3 metres thick and 6 metres high, so pretty robust.
That is substantial.
It's a good old wall. It ran roughly from the Tower of London in the east, north along the London Wall, which was once the industrial quarter. So imagine here you'd have potters and blacksmiths, fullers. This part of the city must have been quite loud, probably quite smelly.
Stinky.
Then continuing our walk along the wall, we turn south towards the river just by St Paul's Cathedral. So as you walk through London's square mile today, under your feet are the bones of the Roman city.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yes. And you'll see it in the street layout. The place names, for example, Aldgate, Bishopsgate, Ludgate, they all trace back to that Roman wall. Now, the Roman occupation of Britain, it lasted for about 350, 400 years. And Londinium was a major hub for most of that time, although it wasn't the capital. That was Camulodunum, or Colchester. Without the Romans to keep the roads clear and the taxes flowing, though, your infrastructure, Londinium did slowly crumble, especially when the army left. And people abandoned the city, nature took over. And so by the time the Saxons showed up, London was pretty much a ghost town.
Don't despair, though, Laura, because if you look carefully, there is still a lot to see. So why don't I tell you about my favourite exhibit at the Crypt Museum? The collection of oil lamps.
Nice.
I'm going to give you a quick description of a typical Roman oil lamp. Made of clay, it fits in the hand and kind of almost echoes the shape of your upturned hand in a way. It has 2 holes, one for the oil and then one for the wick to come out of. Perhaps unsurprisingly though, I want you to think about sight.
Ooh, I would have guessed smell.
First off, Coming across one of these lamps might actually have been a bit out of the ordinary for your run-of-the-mill Londonite. And this is because there have been relatively few oil lamps found in the UK compared to other parts of the empire. This might be because importing olive oil was a bit expensive, so for fuel. But yeah, actually, so seeing one of these might not have been too common an occurrence. Secondly, I want you to think about light. A typical Roman terracotta oil lamp would have produced about 10 to 20 lumens. I don't know how well you know your lumen scale.
How much is a lumen?
That's roughly equivalent to a modern nightlight.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
So using olive oil as fuel, it would have made a small flame around the size of a pea, but flickering and inconsistent, obviously, because this is a burning flame. Light would radiate out within a very narrow radius, maybe about 1 to 2 metres. So think about maybe illuminating a small table that you're working at, or an altar. Maybe it's enough for you to have a meal. And it wouldn't be a uniform light, would it? It would just be pooled around each lamp. So it's not like our modern lighting, which lights up the whole room.
Yeah.
These are pools of light and pockets of darkness, which is quite nice. A full fill of oil, so that's roughly about 30 millilitres, for a single wick lamp, Laura, would burn for about 3 or 4 hours.
Would it?
Good, isn't it?
That's very good.
Well, it's because olive oil is a really quality substance to use.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do we think that extra virgin olive oil would have gone for longer?
Yeah. And then the other thing about using these lamps is that you get the smoky residues left on the walls and everything, so you can see where they've been placed. Now, Laura, assuming that your room is the size of a standard cubicular,
which is... I don't know my cubicular scale either, I'm
so
afraid.
a cubicular is a bedroom or a private chamber thing,
Right.
usually about 3 by 3 metres.
Okay.
And you're using a single nozzle terracotta oil lamp, you would need between 3 to 5 lamps in your bedroom to light that room adequately enough for you to maybe read a book.
Okay.
Now, for a larger space, for your triclinium, Laura.
Yes, dining area.
Yes, you have a very spacious triclinium.
Yes, with many couches.
So for your triclinium or your tablinum, you would need about 8 to 12 lamps. Think about it. That's a lot of lamps.
That's quite a lot of lamps.
These would normally be on wall brackets or tripods because of these bigger spaces.
Yeah.
Now I've done lamps in general, I just want to talk about 2 that actually really stood out. There was a lovely collection in this museum, and it ranged from the really, really simple, so just imagine a disc of clay and then pinching it together to create that vessel to hold the oil.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, there were the incredibly intricate ones. So number 1, the star lamp, in the shape of a 7-pointed star, and this had 7 wick holes and has the image of bull slaying depicted on the top of it.
Yes.
Now this is very topical. If you go back and listen to our first episode in this mini-series, Slaying of the Bull.
Yes.
What does that make you think of?
The Mithraeum.
Correct. 7 wicks. This would have given off quite a lot of light.
Yep.
But the fuel would therefore have burnt off very quickly. So not very practical though for everyday use, and more likely therefore used in a ritualistic setting, which would then tie it back to the Mithras cult again.
Okay. And do we think the number 7 is relevant?
What do we know about Mithras in the number 7, Laura?
Is that the 7 levels of membership?
Yes! The 7 levels of initiation.
I did listen.
Great lamp. Second favourite of mine was the head of the African bearded man.
I liked this one too.
Really lovely design with sharp afro hair, or it could be a headdress moulding. It's in the shape of an elongated mustachioed face. Almost looks like Jafar from Aladdin, I thought. But the flame coming out of the mouth or the chin there would have been really quite cool.
Very nice effect.
And it's no longer there, but this actual lamp would have had a little loop handle to hold it with. North African design. The teardrop or elongated oval shape is particularly associated with North African production, especially in the provinces of Africa Proconsularis, and that would be modern-day Tunisia, parts of Libya.
Right.
This kind of design became popular in the 2nd century CE, and they were mass-produced from moulds. Now, this might seem obvious, Laura, but the clay used in North African lamps tended to be finer and richer in iron oxide.
Oh, yes. I thought as much.
And that's in contrast to those made in Italy and the eastern provinces. And the result was a smoother texture, which was often glossier in appearance. This is a high quality item, so probably rare to see. And if you had one of these, you would definitely be showing it off.
That's a party lamp.
Yeah.
Well, Caroline, you'll be pleased to know I'm going to think about lamps as well.
Oh.
I know, not initially.
Right.
But soon. We'll move on to my favourite exhibit then,
Mm.
which was, and it doesn't sound very exciting, the clay fragments.
Yeah, a lot of museums have some clay fragments.
Yeah.
And you just normally walk right past them.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't in this museum.
No, you had to linger. We've got 3 fragments here, and of course, for everyone listening, these are available on our socials and website, so you can follow along. The 2 smaller ones are heads of figurines, I'd say about 2 centimetres, do you think?
Yeah.
In length.
Yeah.
And then the larger one is about twice the size, 5 centimetres maybe. And this one looks like a clothed torso. The signage tells us that these are likely to be fragments of votive figurines, probably used in a domestic setting, so we're thinking maybe household shrine. The heads might be Venus. I don't know who's established this. Does it look like Venus to you?
Not really.
But I'd want something a bit sexier if I was purchasing a figurine of the goddess of love.
You want a bit of shoulder.
Yeah, just something,
Ankle.
a bit more remarkable.
Okay, yeah. She's not looking her best, is
No,
she? Let's be honest.
Tough day. Now, votives of gods obviously had religious connotations. You were honouring that deity. Maybe you were asking for their protection, their intervention, their help with something. Can you remember when we did our Greek medicine episode and we thought about medical votives?
Yes.
The body parts, yes. So similar here, you're not asking for intervention with a part of the body that you want healed. You are appealing to the god or goddess for particular support or help with something.
Okay. And would you pray at your household shrine?
Yeah. Usually shrines were tended to daily on a regular basis. There were different types of shrine. There were the larariums. But yeah, shrines are important. They're usually tended to daily with prayers and offerings.
And they'd be somewhere in your house.
They would be somewhere in the house. They might be a freestanding structure. So maybe think console table, but a little bit higher. Or they might be in a niche in a wall, so cut into a wall.
Right.
And they might be painted to look like a building if they're a bit smaller, and maybe they're part of the structure of the house that you're actually living in.
So like a mini temple inside your house.
Yeah, a replica of a mini temple. And that could be, maybe think doll's house.
Yeah.
That could be one option. Or you could have something that is painted to look like a temple or a shrine.
Is it like when Nan used to get the nativity scene out at Christmas?
Yes.
Right, but it's there all the time.
It's there all the time. So in that, you had the wise men and you had the Jesus and then the stable and everything. But yes, and whether you've got the freestanding structure or you've got the little niche in the wall, size isn't an issue. But usually you're going to be having some sort of votive figurine in there, perhaps of the gods that you're appealing to. But you're also going to be using things like incense and oil lamps.
Okay, lighting offerings.
Lighting offerings, and to accompany the rituals that would go on with these shrines. Now, can you guess my sense?
I'm going to go for smell.
Yes!
Yay!
Well done!
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I love a good smell.
We haven't done smell in a while. So I talked about the incense. That was always something that happened at these shrines, the burning of the incense, usually burnt in a box. And the popular burning materials were things like cinnamon,
Nice.
rosemary,
Very nice.
frankincense,
Expensive?
myrrh.
Ooh.
Now, I'm not so familiar with frankincense and myrrh and what they smell like. Are you?
They're really quite strong,
Mm-hmm.
pungent, spicy smells.
So they're both apparently a little bit spicy, a little bit sweet, a bit earthy, and a little bit resiny. AlphaAromatics.com describes myrrh as smooth, erotic and arousing.
Well, just perfect for a little household shrine.
Yeah, especially if you've got a little votive of Venus. We can imagine what sort of intervention they might be seeking there.
So you've got a date coming over.
Yeah.
Light the myrrh.
Put your Venus figurine out, set the mood. Yeah. So we could be inspiring fertility here with that setup, or a bit like a love potion. aphrodisiac, something like that.
Nice.
And carrying on with the smells, as well as the incense, we've got the oil lamps, which you've mentioned, known as lucerna. Typically olive oil was used, as you've mentioned, but also they might use nut oil, sesame oil, which are quite good smell-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would
that's
be a
okay.
lovely smell in the house, I think.
But also castor oil.
Less fun.
And fish oil.
That's not going to be an aphrodisiac.
No. How are you going to feel about your whole house smelling of fish?
Well, one time in university...
Oh dear.
My flatmate decided to cook herring in the microwave.
What?
And the whole house stunk for, I'm going to say, 3 weeks.
That is awful.
Yeah. And it was first thing as well. So you just woke up to this...
Morning herring?
Morning microwaved herring.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it was, we were not happy. Word to the wise, never cook herring in the microwave.
No. Anyway, I hope I've demonstrated that the smells involved in household shrines could be great or they could be awful.
You've done that perfectly. Thank you, Lauren.
You.
These little figurines, though, there's that scene in Gladiator, isn't there, at the end, where his friend buries his shrine votive figurines.
Yeah, yeah. And also, the examples that we're looking at here, they're not painted, they're white, they're plain, they're not particularly interesting. But typically, these votive figurines would have been painted in lovely bright colours, and it would have been a really nice scene. So I know, I'm sorry, I'm veering into sight as well and cheating on the
But
senses.
the point is, it's the heart of the home, isn't it?
It is, yes. And it's an inviting visual piece, but also quite all-encompassing because we've got the smells going on as well, whether they're good or bad.
Welcome to my home.
Thank you for joining us today, and remember to tune in next time for the third and final instalment of our Londinium miniseries. If you liked what you heard today, then please do take the time to like, rate, subscribe and share wherever you download your podcasts. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Instagram or Facebook, or why not email us at sistoryhistory@gmail.com. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.